1: How to Spot an Energy Vampire. Sometimes nothing works. Nothing at all. It doesn't matter what you do. Everything you touch just falls to pieces. Everything goes wrong. Regardless of how hard you try, it still goes wrong. Fortunately, there are other days when things work out a bit better. You make your way through the day and actually end up achieving a great deal. There aren't any impending disasters ahead, even though you might be wishing things were working even better. Other days still, everything just seems to flow. You're inspired, passionate, motivated. You find yourself spotting opportunities where weeks earlier, all you could see was doom and gloom. This could all depend on the weather, of course, but it's more likely that you're in a state of positive flow. You're in the zone. The planets suddenly have aligned, or it's just one of those days. In the moment, it's not too important where all the positive energy is coming from. What matters is that it's there, making you feel good inside. It comes over you, and for a few magical moments, you realize how simple it all really is. You wonder why you never thought of it before. The world is yours for the taking. Just get it done. The sense that you're absolutely invincible. The realization that you can do whatever you want. You've cracked the code, found the right opening, and your energy gushes forth. This is the moment. The feeling that this is it. Things are about to go down. However, strangely enough, just 10 minutes later, or 30 seconds later, all of your profound ideas are gone, just like that. Every last thought of a new, bright future has been ground to dust. Your grand ambitions are all shattered. The prospects that looked so promising only moments ago suddenly seem completely insurmountable. You're all washed out. All you see is darkness, and all your strength has disappeared. You don't feel up to anything right now. How is it possible to make that transition from exhilaration and delight to bleak nothingness in just a few minutes? Where did all the boisterous boldness and energy go exactly? Did it all go down some mental inner drain, never to be seen again? And if it did, why? Your day or week or year started out so great, and now it all just feels hopeless. The answer is simple. You encountered a vampire. A vampire whose calling in life it is to quickly and efficiently extinguish people's dreams, obscuring anything that so much as resembles a bright future. An energy vampire crossed your path. An energy vampire is an uninvited mental squatter who seems to live to drain everybody around them of all their energy. Energy vampires are sometimes referred to as psychic vampires too. Despite your change in mood, you know that what you have planned, a new business venture, a trip you wanted to go on, a relationship you wanted to tell somebody about, a house in the country you found, or whatever it was that was feeding you that amazing energy, was actually not a bad idea. It was all entirely realistic, actually. It's just that now you can't even bring yourself to think about it. Somebody helped convince you it was hopeless. And as a result, you file it all away in mental storage under ideas for the future. You'll have to see. Maybe another time, maybe never. The idea has been effectively quashed and may never return to you. We all carry countless such ideas around like mental debris. Imagine a person who always responds the same way, no matter what you've suggested. Well, I'm not sure that's quite right. I think you missed a comma right there. If it happens once, that might not be too bad. You could probably even live with it happening twice or even 3 times. But always being corrected, no matter what you're talking about, how frustrating is that? It even happens when you're discussing subjects you have a pretty good handle on. Stoneface simply furrows their brow and proceeds to ask 12 different questions, which all convey the same consistent insinuation. You have no idea what you're doing. In the end, you will hardly dare open your mouth in case some pedantic bully tries to shut you up. For another example, consider this. You return home from the hospital after a stay you wouldn't have wished upon your worst enemy. This is actually a silly expression, as this is actually the kind of misfortune you might be happy having your worst enemy endure. Perhaps you're not actively seeking sympathy, but when you explain how sick you've been and how scared you were, somebody will tell you all about how they actually suffered far worse health issues, thank you very much. They'll then proceed to deflect all attention from you by relating some lengthy anecdote that you don't believe a single word of. If you had pneumonia, you can bet this person had double pneumonia. How frustrating is that? Or how about this? A numbingly complex project has been tossed your way by your optimistic boss, and she is cheerfully celebrating the amazing job you're about to do on it. Whoop-de-doo! But the more you learn about it, the more you realize that in addition to lacking any kind of plan, the project has such ridiculously overambitious targets that it would take at least a violation of the laws of physics and the participation of 2 Nobel Prize winners to even seem plausible. When you ask for further instructions, your boss looks at you as though you came from another planet. Rather than support and assist you, she asks you with ill-concealed displeasure. If you're sure that you're still happy to be working there, you seem so negative lately, you know? Or perhaps it's just a simple garden project. You're going to build a new patio. Nothing too huge, it shouldn't take more than a couple of days. But then your neighbor interferes. He grins at you from across the fence, hurling some carefully aimed comments at you. And then just like that, the patio has turned into a hazy mirage. A real-life example? A good friend of mine heard that I had managed to purchase my dream home after 30 years of hard work. An 18th century house that required a ridiculous number of renovations. Just the kind of project my wife and I wanted. I was hoping this person might respond along these lines. What fun! I know this has always been a dream of yours. I'd love to come by and see it. Something like that. Instead, I got this. Oh, really? And then we moved on to another subject. Was I asking for too much? Well, maybe. But it disappointed me. This was somebody I had been looking forward to sharing the news with. Instead, the conversation gave me a lot to consider, including how envy can change people. All of these examples illustrate how energy vampires can completely deflate your excitement with a single sentence. It's crazy when you think about it. It could also be a matter of navigating an average day when you're not facing any particular challenges. That is, until you run into the wrong person on your way from the coffee machine. Suddenly, everything seems to be lost. Energy vampires can rob you of your enthusiasm without the slightest effort. But how can you tell you've been hit by an energy vampire, and are there ways to prevent it from happening? An energy drain could be a job, a group, a phenomenon, or anything that's causing difficulty in your life. However, surprisingly often, the culprit is a flesh and blood human being who has made a habit of raining on other people's parades. Some of them are energy vampires because they genuinely enjoy seeing people fail. Maybe it makes them feel big and important to put other people down. Others, however, bumble around in other people's lives like proverbial elephants in china shops, causing irreparable harm without even knowing it. This phenomenon impacts all of our lives from time to time. We've all had moments when we've gone from full speed ahead to making no headway at all in the course of a few hours. All that lovely energy must have gone somewhere, right? Wouldn't you love to know how to steer clear of these obstacles? Imagine if there was a way to evade situations and people who rob you of your positive energy, leaving you feeling empty and confused. Imagine if you could see and discover the warning signs ahead of time and know how to gracefully weave your way around the worst energy drains. This book is about energy vampires, or psychic vampires, or emotional vampires. All three labels are sometimes applied to the same phenomenon. The term energy vampires doesn't exist in every language, but the English phrase gives a pretty accurate idea of what it's all about. Individuals Energy vampires, who feast on your life force and leave you drained and dry, practically a member of the Walking Dead. They also leave you in danger of doing the same to others. It might all sound a bit bonkers, but when you think about it, it's actually quite an apt allegory. The mythological vampire drains their victim's life force by drinking their blood, and an energy vampire does the same by robbing people of their confidence, their motivation, and sometimes even their desire to live. I don't want us to get bogged down in semantics here, but I do find the similarity amusing. The main difference, I suppose, is that fairy tale vampires know what they're doing and can't help themselves, while real-life energy parasites aren't always aware of the impact they have on others. Also, different people lose their energy in different ways. Usually, we don't all respond to an event the exact same way, and that's probably a good thing. Some people might be completely exhausted by just a minor dispute over something trivial, like a travel destination, while others might actually gain energy from the same situation. Getting to engage in a little verbal hand-to-hand seems to wake them up. On the other hand, having to wait drives them insane, while the first group might not mind that in the slightest. Identical situations, but wildly different reactions. While some might only be mildly annoyed, if at all, by the sluggishness of their colleagues, others might cancel entire projects if people don't express sufficient enthusiasm right away. If they don't get the acceptance and appreciation they feel entitled to, they won't bother. On the other hand, they will respond positively to novelty and change, both things the first group will strongly dislike. Identical situations, but again, wildly different reactions. Some of us just need a break sometimes, a chance to sit down and regroup before we go at it again. If we skip too many breaks, we simply wouldn't have the energy to see something through. In contrast, others hate sitting still and resting and need to be even more active in their leisure time in order to recover. If they don't get to roar along at full throttle, they will quickly run out of steam and get into a bad mood. And how about this? While some people need to interact with others in order to fill up their gas tank, others might find that people and conversations drain them completely. If they don't get to spend some time by themselves now and then, they can become absolutely impossible to deal with. Energy comes and goes in different ways in different people, and that goes for both positive and negative energy. Neither way is right or wrong, but knowing what triggers these reactions in yourself and why can be very valuable. It can help you avoid major missteps and preserve your energy for the right things. It's complicated. However, it's often a matter of who you are and what personality traits you possess. We'll be taking a closer look at these things in the section titled The Disc Theory, a Study in Energy Loss. Most of these challenges can be solved, you see. Regardless of what you react to personally, you might want to consider what it would be worth to you to dodge as many of these energy drains as possible. What would you give to be able to maintain your energy at peak capacity when you need it the most? Or why not all the time? In this book, I'll be detailing a series of different kinds of energy vampires, how to spot them, the effects they can have on you, and how they do it. At this point, I should mention that this isn't the only book out there on energy vampires. I've read a large number of the ones that are already available, and some of them offer suggestions that I actually suspect may be of no use at all. This book focuses on everyday situations, the kinds of things you and I both encounter quite commonly. However, I will also address how basically anybody can protect themselves if they encounter somebody who is a bad influence on them. Who falls victim to energy vampires? Well, the truth is, everyone does. But each type of energy vampire will have different effects on different people. And that makes sense, really. For instance, you might tell a friend how Johnny is such a pain to deal with, but your friend just doesn't see it. Johnny? He's fabulous. Usually, there are no simple explanations when it comes to human behavior. Somebody your partner might find annoying and unruly because they can never seem to sit still might seem energetic and stimulating to you. Another person might seem very strange to you because he hardly ever says a word. What an energy vampire. but others might appreciate this individual's ability to refrain from blathering on about stuff. We can all fall victim to energy vampires, but it tends to happen in different ways. Naturally, these are some varieties that seem to cause near universal offense. Pathological liars, for instance, don't need to have many allies. Different types of energy vampires will also affect us to varying degrees. It might range from bemusement or mild annoyance all the way to post-traumatic stress. It's a very wide spectrum. You often wouldn't know what happened until afterwards. One thing that's clear, however, is that your own insight into who you are can help you evade the influence of specific types. Self-awareness may well be the key here. It could even be the best protection available against energy vampires. If you've read any of my books before, you'll know by now that I will, sooner or later, discuss the disc theory and its 4 colors. This is a simplified map of human behavior, but it shouldn't be viewed as a full, in-depth understanding of 100% of another individual's inner workings. As you make your way through the book, you'll see me refer to the system repeatedly. In a later section, I'll also be giving you more details and explain how the different color types themselves can actually cause you serious energy loss, depending on your own personality. What sets this book apart from my previous titles is that it focuses on behaviors and mannerisms that don't really have anything to do with the 4 colors. However, realizing how you function personally will give you important tools for managing different varieties of energy vampires. Here, though, I'd like to give a brief introduction to the system, just to make sure any readers who have never encountered it before will know how to approach the subject. If you feel that this is all familiar ground to you, feel free to skip ahead, but I suggest you give yourself a quick reminder as to who's red and who's green and why it's useful to know. The 4 colors are based on the widely disseminated disc theory, which is used in contexts such as recruiting, sales training, and leadership, but can also be helpful to individuals seeking to better understand themselves. Personally, I've used the system for more than 30 years, often complementing it with other tools to get a more complete picture. It's based on the matrix on the following page. The system divides people into the following categories: introverts versus extroverts, and task-oriented versus relationship-oriented. The various types of behavior are outlined in the image on page 20. Red people tend to gain energy from activity and bustle and from staying on the move. However, they tend to lose energy when people ask them to sit down and relax. Losing control is the worst thing that can happen to them. They're good at handling other people, however, they don't feel any particular need for constant company. Yellows love to socialize and revel at being the center of everyone's attention. They always like to offer their opinions on things, and they gain energy from bringing about change. The worst energy drain for yellows is social isolation. It's a severe stressor for them. A lack of human contact can be exhausting for them. Greens tend to prefer the status quo more than anything. They thrive when everything is the way it usually is. Their most serious energy drainage, as you might expect, is caused by frequent change. It's even worse if the change is random or unmotivated. That can be an incredible stressor for them. They need to have people around them, but not just anyone. They rely on people they know well who won't stir up any trouble. Finally, blues prefer it when things are neat and orderly. They spend much of their cool and steady energy checking the details. This is where they find security, and being wrong about something, for example, not being clued in, is probably the worst thing a blue person can imagine. Other people are more or less a necessary evil, and although blues can attend parties, they need some time to recuperate afterwards. As you can no doubt guess, few people will exclusively display only one of these basic personality aspects. The most common arrangement, which covers around 80% of individuals in my experience, is a profile consisting of 2 colors. Some even possess 3. Very few people only exhibit a single color, but they're out there. As I mentioned, I'll be providing more details on the different colors and how they tend to interact later on in this book. By learning about your own colors, you can also figure out how you will respond to the various kinds of energy vampires you're about to read about. It's simply a matter of knowing yourself. The main point of reading this book is to help you, regardless of who you are and why, to preserve more of your energy reserves. for more important things than just handling people and situations that only complicate your life. That's what this book is about. Now, while we're on the topic of self-knowledge, while I've been writing this book, I've discovered things about myself I didn't expect to find. What I learned is that although I found doing research and writing about the behaviors of others interesting, the most significant learning experience for me was recognizing aspects of myself in no fewer than 2 of the complex varieties of energy vampires. Maybe not to a high degree, but nonetheless, I found tendencies in my behavior that I had never reflected on before. Maybe we're all energy vampires to some degree, depending on whom we ask. Be that as it may, I definitely possess some rather unflattering traits of the control freak type, which you'll be learning more about in a moment. It's not exactly something I'm proud of. It also made me think, because I most definitely don't want to have that kind of effect on the people I interact with. You might very well have the same experience when you read this book. Some of the descriptions might strike a chord within you. If this happens, don't worry about it. Instead, think of it as an opportunity to refine your personality. That's not a bad thing, is it? This book contains a list of the different types I consider to be the greatest thieves of energy, lust for life, and overall motivation. Yours as well as mine. This doesn't mean that there aren't further variations worthy of mention in this rather depressing area, but the following types are the ones I've chosen to focus on in this book. In the sections discussing some of the more serious issues in the book, I've taken the liberty of inserting some humor in order to lighten things up a little. This is not an attempt to make light of the problems themselves, but rather to make the text more enjoyable to read and make your way through. I hope you won't mind. Join me on an exciting journey through a series of everyday situations I'm sure you'll be very familiar with. Keep a notebook handy, or make notes right here in the book. Consider this official permission to do so.